Hi, welcome to XReality podcast. I'm the host, Dominic Wu, and beside me is our guest, Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Would you share a little bit about your background with us?
Hi, Dominique. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Yeah, sure. I'll give a bit of my professional background. I started out my career some time ago. I've always been in tech, but I started out in like technical diagramming, CAD, product lifecycle management, 3D modeling with companies like Autodesk, Visio Corporation, not the TV, but the diagramming tool that Microsoft acquired back in 2000. And with that, I kind of transitioned once as part of Microsoft to managing some of the companies that built these 3D CAD and PLM tools. So companies like PTC, Dassault Systems, Autodesk, who I had formerly worked for. Um, Later, I then transitioned into mobile. So really focused on kind of mobile and embedded Pocket PC, Windows Phone, back when smartphones were new and emerging. And I actually ran the Motorola OEM business at Microsoft. So, we delivered a lot of new smartphones back then, and kind of rode the smartphone phase, if you will. Um, I followed that into really building. That's when I started to kind of branch out to startups. I left Microsoft for a while. We did some mobile application, enterprise application development with a company called Spring Wireless, and now known as Spring Mobile Solutions. Um, and Ultimately, I ended up back at Microsoft, initially working back with Windows Phone at the time. But it introduced me to a new project that Microsoft was working on at the time, a very secret project that ultimately became the first HoloLens. And I was doing business development for that platform. So it was my job to go and bring in enabling technologies. Some of the technologies I brought in, like the development platform, Unity. So I worked to make sure that Microsoft had a platform that developers could use to build experiences for the device. I also worked with companies like Autodesk that I had formerly worked with to bring in some of their capabilities and other enabling technologies. And part of that effort was Microsoft was also looking for firms to build applications for that platform. And because I had worked with and knew the co-founders of Taqtile, I brought them in to see this uh, device before the launch of the device, and was able to get Taqtile very interested in maybe rethinking the future that they would take their business. And long story short, I was asked to come join Taqtile. We participated in the launch of the first HoloLens device and really, built built a company around delivering XR capabilities to enterprise and to industry. And that really kind of takes me to where I am today. So we're still on that journey of, delivering, a platform, in this case, a work instruction platform that's XR enabled and targeting, large enterprises, defense and various organizations. And so that's the journey I've been on so far.
Wow. So you mentioned that HoloLens development and you were working on the platform. Yeah, we know that HoloLens in the past, it was one of the most like innovative and pioneer
Yes.
device. I think ever since Quest, Vive, Pico start more like I would say, like a more recent, when we think of a headset, we would think of three of them. And long time ago, I heard that HoloLens is going to reduce their staff or something. So, right now, do you have any updates for what's HoloLens now? For example, like, is there any? I remember a long time ago, it's called MRTK.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't. Yeah, and I remember first time I used MRTK as I didn't have a HoloLens. Like there are so many expensive headsets. I have Quest 3, or Quest 2, or Quest Pro,
Yep.
and I use MRTK to
Yeah.
install on my Quest headset, and I try like different tool, like a framework or like a
Hmm.
template. I really love like a lot of things that you can see you see like right now the UI, right? Or like the system design. A lot of them is from HoloLens, like a
Yes, exactly.
gaze, right? Like you
Yeah.
look at something and very long and there's like a rotation, or your finger, right? You grab something. So right now, for example, Quest 3 has a lot of like templates. But
Yeah.
if you kind of trace back, and you can see it's pretty much a lot of the gesture, a lot of the user interface is from HoloLens. So
Totally.
what do you see? I feel like it's a grandpa.
I mean,
Oh,
it's amazing. So, without getting into the specifics right away, something that I see a lot both on the Quest and on some of the actually Apple Vision Pro coming out. It's there a lot of the experiences that are coming out and the things that are being showcased. Honestly, there we launched these things back when the HoloLens originally launched. For example, there's a PGA Tour app on the Apple Vision Pro,
mm,
and if you go all the way back to the launch of the HoloLens, we built a PGA Tour, application to show like the shots over different golf courses from the pros. And now those things are kind of being recycled and being shown as new again. And I can't tell you how many things I see like these new apps that are being promoted. It's like, oh yeah, well, we were doing those things very similarly back in 2016, 2017, that are now arguably, the devices, of course, have advanced quite a bit, but
mm,
the fundamental experiences and the things that people are trying to do in many instances really haven't changed that much.
mm,
So I was a little surprised by that, I guess. But it's just funny to kind of see that. But I do think that HoloLens really broke a lot of ground. That Microsoft is pretty much completely out of the XR game when it comes to building new devices, and delivering new experiences for that device. So, they already announced that they're going to continue to provide support for the HoloLens, but you really can't buy any new HoloLenses. They're just unavailable. They're not being manufactured anymore. So you have to find them used. Maybe some folks have some inventory. Good luck finding it if they do.
mm.
Um, and then the last piece of business that Microsoft had was the IVAS program that they had been awarded to them by the US Army. And they recently sold that business to Anduril. And so that whole team that was doing all that development,
Oh.
they all moved over to Anduril, and they're now Anduril employees. And Anduril now has that original IVAS contract. Um,
Oh, wow. Is that the Pomelaki and potentially Meta?
Yeah, so
Mark
well,
Zuckerberg?
so
What's
yeah,
going on?
so that's where it gets really interesting is so Palmer Luckey was really excited to kind of bring this business over. And it had been rumored that Anduril was already working on some of their own things anyway.
Mm,
And then you see the announcement with Meta.
mm,
And it's interesting you bring up MRTK. So yeah, Microsoft started MRTK. They then it was always a kind of shared source libraries,
mm,
community source.
mm,
And they eventually just they open sourced that. I think there were a number of companies that signed on to kind of keep it alive. I know that Magic Leap was in the mix. I think Qualcomm was in the mix. Particularly around the time where they made sure that MRTK worked with Snapdragon Spaces. But now that's even evolving. And if you look to where that's headed, I think you're seeing maybe a fork of some of these enabling like UI tools and underlying tools. And this is probably, I'm not the best person to speak to this because I'm more on the business side than the technical side, but Android XR is, you know, kind of the
Oh,
path that I think if you look at where Qualcomm was
yeah.
looking to take those libraries, I think that you're going to see them, you know, putting their weight and muscle behind Android XR. I think a lot of the development staff that was at Microsoft from the early days, I think a lot of them have actually landed at companies like Meta and Apple.
Hmm.
And so you see a lot of those same things being utilized in the Quest, and then you know, and other platforms these days.
Oh,
So anyway, MRTK is something that Taqtile is also, that's a enabling library that we've utilized as well. And so we're looking at that because we want to see for these major platforms, well, what direction are they taking these enabling tools? Because we want to focus really on the business process, the logic layers. You know, some of these user interface tools, the more common they are across the operating systems and across the different applications, then the easier it is for users to utilize them. So you don't want to have different gestures and different, you know, interaction models. You want to minimize that so that users can become more familiar with the platforms. And so we don't want to create something new if the platforms are already going to provide that. So these enabling toolkits are very important to keep up with. So yeah, it's an interesting space where that's concerned.
yeah. And you mentioned that business doesn't like, when you develop something and you need to, because different input system and you need to unify it. Uh, as far as I noticed that meta building blocks right now, like since like a when, like I would say since very recent, they changed their OVR rig, camera rig into open XR or XR rig. It's more like an open XR, and their
Okay.
hand switching from OVR into open XR, more like a. Um, I think it's pretty good because, for example, like for Meta, right, their input system were old. In Unity you need to check the old input system,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
for OpenXR it's the new. Everything need to bundle. I personally is a pretty lazy person, so I like how easy that MetaQuest. There are so many building blocks. I just plug in and play and
Right.
replace the assets. But for OpenXR, I have to think about what types of things I have to bundle, the keyboard, the joysticks, and every single device.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm more towards like, oh, if I can have a lot of new template, I can just plug in and play. That would be awesome. So it's just me as more like a developer side,
Right.
like wish the platform to be. So enterprise, what's the difference between enterprise platform and for indie? For me, it's more indie game creator. What do you see the difference?
I mean, I think from a developer perspective,
Hmm.
um, I think the aims tend to be similar when you try to think about how do I make this solution apply applicable and available to as many people as possible, right? Regardless of what device or platform they're using.
Hmm.
That's at least how we approach the problem. So
Hmm.
we don't want to prescribe or assume that our user is going to have a specific device.
Oh.
And I'll just go back to, that's from lessons learned, because when we first started down this journey
Hmm.
with the HoloLens 1,
Hmm.
we were only doing HoloLens, right?
Yeah.
And if you think back historically, there was a big gap between HoloLens 1 and HoloLens 2. Um, Microsoft ran out of inventory of HoloLens 1, and there
Hmm.
were many months, I
Hmm.
think perhaps even up to a year of no
Hmm.
inventory of devices until HoloLens 2 released.
Hmm.
And we had at that point in time, we had made a bet on a product that our customers couldn't get. And
Mm,
so we had to make a strategic decision at that point
mm,
to diversify. Now, our initial diversification was, well, we should really support tablet use as well.
mm,
So, let's go for iPad, give people, meet people where they're at. And so we made that strategic decision then. And then we also branched out into other headsets. I think
mm,
as an indie game developer or indie, application developer that's looking at maybe more consumer audience, I think you have the same aims. It's like, well, I don't know what device they're going to use. Not every There are a couple platforms that you could place a bet on and get broad distribution today that you definitely couldn't do back then. Quest is probably the obvious one,
mm,
because they have so many units that they've sold.
mm.
But by and large, if you've been working more in the VR ecosystem, it's like, well,
Yeah,
wait a minute, there are people out there with Vive, and there are people out there with Pico, as you mentioned,
yeah.
and it's still a pretty broad ecosystem, and you want to be able to you want to get as many folks access to your
Mm,
application as possible. So
mm,
from that perspective, I think it's the same. I think where it really differs is the scrutiny that goes into kind of the back end.
mm,
How is it hosted? Where's the data?
mm,
What kind of data is in there?
mm.
That's where the enterprises get concerned. Who has access to the data, right? So
Oh,
access control, things like that. If you're an indie developer, you don't even need people to log in. But if you want them to log in, you can say, oh, well, have them use their Meta ID or
mm,
their Apple ID or Google ID, and that's totally fine. But
yeah.
for an enterprise, you can't do that. It's got to be SAML or maybe Active Directory, Intune. No, it has a different name now, but Microsoft's enterprise authentication capability. So I think that authentication, where the data is stored, how the data is transported, those then become areas that enterprises are really concerned with. That I don't think game or consumer app developers have to be as concerned about.
Yeah, yeah. I think this is like a very important issue, like the data, right? Because we all know that for some reason, there's always a way for people to get your data and train their AI model. For example, like
Yeah.
I think even though the safest one we would think about maybe Apple, right?
Yes.
Well, taking care of your data. Amazon or AWS will taking care of your data. But for some reason, when you look at the news, even Perplexity, I remember um, their goal is to create something that really protected people's data. However, if you see recent news, it seems like somebody sued them because, like a Reddit, right?
Right.
You get all our customers' data and training your model.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think for a lot of company, um, even though they have great policy or something, even you see like a chat gpt, we all know that chat gpt, when the cto, I think cto is now is leaving the company, tons of people leaving the company. Yeah, before I watched the interview for that ceo, the woman one, and she keeps saying, we use something public, and I remember the host was trying to ask more, are you scrapping like a youtube,
Right.
people's YouTube something, and she just like trying to make it really blurry, but not the wrong answer. Like, oh, we just use everything public online, something like trying to um, do that. So, and you can see ChatGPT now is diving into a lot of like academic
Yes. Yeah.
system. For example, like Turnitin. It's a academic kind of system which is catching student whether they cheat or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Using AI to write. And I look up, I Google the what model is running it. It's ChatGPT. And
Hmm.
ChatGPT now is having another one, which is called education model,
Right.
right? And you
Yep.
can see that, oh, wow, it's protecting and not selling. But when you see the history of everything, and Meta, right? Meta is infamous for its
Right.
data. Like, yeah,
Of
and
course.
yeah, of course. So yeah, I understand that enterprise want the safest place, but according to your experience, which one is truly safe? Not really training the data
Yeah.
on any platform.
Well, you have to like, you know, the from an AI perspective, all of the AIs, as far as I understand, that are out there today, um, they've all been trained on what was, we'll say, publicly available, but not
Mm.
necessarily, it wasn't intended to be used in the way that they've utilized it. But the base models that like they're already trained. You can't go back and untrain them. You can't remove the data that they already have,
It's
right?
like a,
So
once I steal your data and
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
it
And
yeah.
um, and so, but going forward, so there's two things. So what's been done is done. There are absolutely companies out there trying to get, they have lawsuits. I think New York Times is
Yeah.
is I believe suing OpenAI, for example, for copyright infringement, and they're trying to get a license, at least
Mm,
some money for content that they know was
mm,
utilized to train those models. But again, that's I think what most companies are looking for is looking forward. Now, I'm maybe not going to address your question initially the way you intended it, but there's part of this as a company that it's strategic to make sure your data's out there.
oh.
Because if you think about it, the AI engines are now becoming the new search engines, right?
Yes, that's what I'm worried. For
And
example, if
yeah,
New York Times sue OpenAI, then if OpenAI's search engine becomes the most popular, exceeding Google, maybe OpenAI will say, "I will put you down." You know?
right.
Yeah, it's like the revenge, and it's yeah, you couldn't really
You
say
don't know.
anything.
Yeah, you don't know if but and so if you're a business, like I know my wife's company,
Mm,
they don't allow her or her colleagues to use AI um, in their work day because they're afraid that the proprietary information will get into the AI system,
mm,
and then they'll basically inadvertently be leaking um, confidential company or trade secret information. And I
mm,
understand that to a certain extent.
yeah.
However, I look at our business, and we don't put these limitations on our employees. Our employees are not allowed to share confidential information. That's and
Oh.
they agree to that, and so they're taught you should not put confidential information into an AI tool.
Mm,
However, we don't prevent them from using AI tools in their day-to-day job. And to a certain extent, it's actually benefited us because now
mm,
if you go into, I believe if you went into a Gemini or into a Chat GPT
yeah.
and you tried to query information about one about Taqtile or
Yeah.
manifest, I think you would get fairly rich information.
Yeah.
But even if you went and did more generic searching around industrial use of digital work instructions or augmented reality, I actually believe that you would get content that, because we've been utilizing this, you would get content that was informed by our company, our team, and things that we've done. And that's a benefit to us, right? Because
Mm,
if you think about, let's say that, somebody is looking for, well, what are the attributes of a enterprise, AR work instruction system, and they type that in,
mm,
it's going to be informed by, at least in part, by data that we've probably supplied to the marketplace.
mm.
And that's a benefit to us. Now, trade secrets and some of
Yeah,
the,
right.
that's where it's or customer information.
Mm,
That, of course, we don't want to make available, and for
mm,
obvious reasons.
mm,
And I think a lot of companies, they have to walk that balance. It's like, well, this is becoming a tool that we can use to promote our capabilities and have people discover products,
mm,
and even like if you think about customer success,
mm.
if somebody can troubleshoot a problem with an OEM's piece of equipment,
No.
that prevents them from having to phone their support staff for a certain level of issues,
Mm.
that's a benefit to them.
Yeah,
Like
right.
they can, that's going to be a cost to them. They can't
Mm,
monetize it. So they would much rather let, some tool look at the thing that information that's on their website already and allow
mm.
them to learn how to do it themselves rather
Yeah.
than calling a customer service rep.
Mm,
So those uses make a lot of sense. Where it really gets interesting though is when you have highly regulated industries, when you have PPI, and personally identifiable information. Of
mm,
course, you don't want to share that. Trade secret, and
mm,
and then you have when you start to get into government and defense,
mm, mm,
or even pharmaceutical, you get highly confidential information
mm.
that needs to be managed and um, very carefully in terms of, well, what gets exposed to AI and what doesn't. And
Yeah.
um, it's also a challenge and I think we'll probably talk about this later, but today, if you go to an AI tool and you type in, something simple like how to change the oil in my car,
Yeah.
it'll be very clear in the step-by-step instructions on how to change the oil in your car.
Mm,
You can have AI do that today.
mm.
However, if you have a very specific piece of equipment,
Yeah.
so I'll use the Army has a new people are familiar with Humvees. Well, the new version of that is called a JLTV,
Mm,
Joint Light Tactical Vehicle.
mm,
Um,
wow.
and if you want to learn how to uh, do some preventative maintenance
Mm,
on the automated tire pressure system,
mm,
you're not going to find that on ChatGPT, right? You're not going to be
mm,
able to go in and say, hey, how do I troubleshoot because that's a very specific piece of equipment.
mm.
I I suspect ChatGPT will try to give you an
Can
answer.
can you write down the acronym? I just wanna test out ChatGPT. I'm just
Oh,
very curious because I inside my heart I know like all the policy is so good, but when it's actually being implemented, it's yeah, I have a question. So
yeah,
JLTV, okay, so let's try it. How to
yeah.
maintain, right? How to
Well,
maintain
yeah, I would say, how to check the tire pressure system on a JLTV.
the tire system pressure.
Yeah, tire pressure system, because it has a tire pressure system that tells you what the tire pressure is in each tire, for example.
Okay. Yeah, ChatGPT is still running. How to check the tire pressure system? Search in the web. Okay. Wow. Tell you step one, step two, step three, step four. If
Yeah,
you want to
so
see it. Okay. So yeah, let's see. I mean, I really um yeah, I
so what
yeah,
so
it's
what I
just
was so what I was gonna say is it did what I suspected. So it's given you an answer, but
yeah.
you really don't know if that is the right answer for that vehicle, and you certainly
Okay.
don't know if that's the right answer, if that is the approach that is allowable by US DoD, right? Because
Is
that's
this like a, if you take a look, is this like a bearable acceptive? Because 4.5 is considered to be a super powerful model. Is this the right answer?
I mean, again, that's that's the problem. I would
Uh,
say you don't know if that's the right answer.
oh.
You can I like how it has a poetic recap.
Oh, I mean, I personally really, I did my ChatGPT. I adjusted to be very poetic, like
Okay.
the Shakespeare way.
I
So
see.
still soldier. Oh, so they are probably doing from getting the information from Reddit. Wow.
Yeah, but
Army.com.
it,
Yeah.
it it will it will also search perhaps
Hmm.
um, other tire pressure systems from other vehicles
Hmm.
and other common issues, right?
Hmm.
That may be fine. Like in a generic
Hmm.
example, it might be okay, but it may not apply to the specific vehicle you're working on, or
Hmm.
it may not be acceptable by the doctrine of the organization, the policies of the organization that have been
Hmm.
imposed. It's like you must follow the official manual. Now we picked a vehicle, but
Hmm.
imagine if that was an aircraft, right? And
Hmm.
so now you're doing the same thing for a component on an aircraft engine.
Hmm.
Would that comply with FAA guidelines? Would Boeing or Airbus or Embraer or whoever the manufacturer of that aircraft, would they um, stand behind the answer that was given to you by that AI?
Hmm.
I would say I can say with good confidence that they would say no. You can't
Hmm.
count on that, right?
Oh.
They
Hmm.
they can't guarantee that the data that AI is giving you is accurate for that particular use or model.
Hmm.
And I think that's where it's really important for people to understand that you have there's general knowledge that's out there, that's been out there, that we can get, use AI. AI can be super helpful for like telling me how to change the belt on my washing machine. And I bet you it's close enough. I could go replace that belt on my washing machine, no problem. But if I'm wanting to figure out how to work on a piece of industrial machinery,
Hmm.
it'll try to give me an answer
Hmm.
as you just saw, but I can't guarantee that that answer is really correct for my
Oh.
circumstance or for my
Hmm.
piece of equipment. And
Yeah.
so there's a risk there that I think a lot of people need to be, conscientious of. And I actually think that that's also an opportunity for tools um, like Tactile's Manifest,
Hmm.
we can uh, where we can encapsulate that content in a and codify it in the appropriate way where it can be in compliance with both policy and the requirements of the OEM or whoever the governing organization might be.
Hmm.
Anyway, I imagine we'll get there later. But because we just dove straight into kind of AI uses and how it relates. I do think that AI is a very
Hmm.
interesting enabling technology
Yeah.
that and I think AI and XR are really kind of two sides of the same coin.
Hmm.
Um, you know, one can be the source of content. The other one can be kind of a display layer or a not just display. I mean,
Hmm.
because AR can involve a variety of different modalities, but it's the way to kind of act upon the information.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you see that AI enhance AR experience? For example, like the easiest way I would think is more like a content creation and also NPC, like a non-player character. Anything that you think that AI will enhance XR, and also, for example, like for enterprise, there might be some certain level of hallucination, which enterprise doesn't want. So how
Right.
can you train the local data and make sure it doesn't fall too off? For example, like what types of model you suggest? For example, ChatGPT or Guark considered to be really has full of personality. So what types of model or setup you would recommend to secure and also more reliable, more like a local AI system?
So, well, I'll start with the first part of the question because one, I think AI is an amazing partner with XR,
Yeah.
and they are really, they work well together. As I said, they're two sides of the same coin. At Taqtile, we're already utilizing AI on the authoring front. So we have two flavors of our software. We have Manifest Maker, which is a free tool that we allow folks to download. They can download it from Apple App Store onto their iPad, their iPhone, or the Apple Vision Pro.
Mm.
And it's an authoring environment. It's made to create step-by-step work procedures.
Mm.
It inherently it's not inherently XR focused. It's really work instruction focused,
Mm.
uh, and we've begun to put some AI smarts in it. And the first thing that we did with respect to AI is we allowed users to take long form video. So they could record their own long video on device, or even take a previously recorded video. And we transcribe that video,
Mm.
and we break out the steps. We break out
Oh,
any notes
that's
that's
smart.
associated to those steps,
Mm.
and we even clip the video for each of those steps. So
Mm.
you get a short video clip for each segment of the step-by-step instruction. Um,
Oh.
so we use AI to take an unstructured, just
Mm.
regular video, and now turn it into a structured step-by-step um, procedure that then you can modify and edit. Um,
Mm.
our latest version of that, we extended that further, where you can do the same thing with a manual.
Mm.
So you can take an owner's manual or a user's guide in a PDF format,
Mm.
and essentially, think about taking the owner's manual for a piece of equipment that you just bought,
Mm.
and then Maker can you load that in, you give it natural language prompt telling it what you want it to do. So, you go into the prompt and you say, I'd like a step-by-step procedure on how to, do the XYZ troubleshooting procedure
Mm.
on, these pages. And you give it some natural language instructions, and then it'll go into the PDF and it'll extract that into a step-by-step procedure based on the prompt that you provided.
Mm.
And we deployed that onto Maker. There's a couple of advantages. So as I mentioned, one of the things about Maker is it is Apple
Mm.
only, and one of the reasons that uh, we're doing a lot of the experimentation on that platform is
Mm.
Apple actually has really good um, ability to do AI offline. So
Oh,
if you have a iPad Pro,
yes.
basically any Apple device with a M1,
Oh,
any
M1
Apple
chips.
M1, M2 up to M4, right? So any of the Apple silicone, it's able to process the AI on the device itself. And
Oh.
this is really important for our clients, because not of all, as we were just talking about,
Mm.
not all of our clients want to put their data into the cloud to have
Yeah.
it trained or have it processed.
Yeah.
So this allows you to use
Mm.
a edge device to be able to do the processing, and that data never has to go to the cloud. It might take a little longer,
Mm.
but and of course, if you try to do something too big, then the device may or may not support that, because it may not have
Yeah.
appropriate processing or memory. But these are the things that we're experimenting with, and that our customers are experimenting with as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And my question is that for M1 chips up to M4, you mentioned in
Yeah.
Apple device, you can totally run your AI local. Do you mean run Apple AI? Um, or
No,
uh,
no. So yeah, no, that's a good question.
uh,
I think uh, and I'm pretty sure we use Mistral model, which I think
mm.
is a French AI company.
Oh,
Um,
okay, okay. I
yeah,
use that because every time when I wanna compare things, I would like to ask like a super deep question, and I will compare each AI model. Start with like ChatGPT, Quark. Gemini, Claude, Perplexity, and that French one. And that one, for some reason, I find out it's very French way, very out there, very imaginary. But anyway, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, I think that I say that's what we're using today, but I believe we've
Mm.
built, we haven't set it up such that we're dependent on any one model, right?
Oh,
So I think that, that's what the Maker system is using today for its models, but there's no guarantee that that's what it'll always be.
mm.
And as far as I know, and again, I don't, it would might be interesting for you to interview our CTO, who'll know this much better than I do.
No worries. Yeah.
But I believe that having the ability to switch which model you use would also be
Oh, yeah.
something that would make sense down the road. Um, One of the other things, so I mentioned the maker side. We also have the enterprise version of
Oh,
Manifest,
mm.
and so you can take these procedures that are AI enhanced or authored, and then you can bring those into the enterprise version of Manifest. Um, we have both ourselves and our partners have used our API to integrate with other AI systems as well in a
Mm.
number of different ways.
Mm.
So we don't have to, all the heavy lifting doesn't necessarily have to be on our shoulders. And that gets me
Mm.
to the second point related to your original question, which
Yeah.
is, um, uh, how do you prevent things like hallucinations and things
Mm.
like that? I think I think it's really important that um, companies and organizations, they need to know what data these models have been trained upon,
Oh,
right? So and that's one of the challenges with some of the larger models is, especially if they come with a kind of a preset data set that can influence the results, if that makes sense.
mm.
So, and this is where I think this is where our work instruction platform and AI toolkits, I think we see a lot of value in what we're able to bring, because
Mm.
you can use our platform to capture the content that you need um, for work procedures.
Mm.
Really, and we focus on frontline workers, step-by-step instructions, right?
Mm.
For any type of equipment. Um, but you can train the system with just the data that's in our system, and as I mentioned, it's like for data that you have in your approved toolkit of resources. If you're the Army or Marine Corps, you might use what's called tech manuals,
Mm.
TMs.
Mm.
These are the instructions that they are required to use for their step-by-step procedures, and you
Yeah.
can use that as the baseline. And they have to use these. Air Force uses TOs, tech orders. But they're the same thing. These are the instructions that they are supposed to follow on
Mm.
how to do certain maintenance procedures and certain operational procedures. So you start with that as a baseline,
Mm.
and then you build on top of that with um, pictures,
Mm.
videos, and even augmented reality captures and overlays.
Mm.
And that all enhances and gets, it's essentially correlated together into a database
Mm.
that then you can use it as a structured database that is known to be the appropriate way to perform that task.
Mm.
And then you can use your AI model to use that data instead
Mm.
of, you know, a large pool of data that you don't really know where it came from, or what the source data was. So
Mm.
the model may have trained on how to read and interpret data from other sources, but it's been applied to your corporate or your industry data that you've pointed it at, and that's the data that it's allowed to pull from. So
Mm.
I think that's where um, I think the enterprise utility of this is headed, and that's also what helps you prevent the hallucinations.
Mm.
Now, you also need the system to be honest when it's unable to comply with your question, or you know what I mean? Like it may not
Mm.
have the answers that you're seeking because those haven't been put into the system.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've seen with some of the more publicly available tools is that they want to give you an answer. They're really eager to give you to make you
Yeah,
happy and
right.
give you an answer,
Yeah.
whether it's right or not.
Yeah.
You know, you need a system that has that links to its sources, that
Mm.
gives you confidence level of,
Yes.
the information that it's giving you, and will come back to you when it says this may not be accurate.
Mm.
So it's really important to have those notifications, particularly I think for some of these industrial and enterprise types of use cases.
Yeah, I think it's really good that you mentioned that start with like a step-by-step regulation and build on top of it. You can train it on picture or capture AR, all those stuff, and maybe use like a HoloLens for certain types of training. And may I ask you, what do you see the difference between VR training and AR training for example, like defense or enterprise or higher regulations such as Air Force? What do you see like a VR training versus AR training? What's the pros and cons or benefits for
Mm-hmm.
each other? Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's start with VR, immersive training. There's actually a lot of use of VR. It's great for simulation.
Yeah.
It's really good at one of the things that um, uh, folks often get limited um, stick time, they say, for like pilots,
Mm.
time in the seat like particularly for like pilot training or something like that. Equipment access. I mean, it's the same for a lot of things. So like a lot of the equipment that these people are learning to operate or maintain or use when
Mm.
they're going through the learning process, it's in use for whatever operational function that it's doing. And so
Mm.
it's not easy to get access to that equipment for training purposes.
Oh.
And so these simulations can be used in a safe environment. It allows people to make mistakes that that are low to no consequence.
Yeah.
They can get mental reps and they can get familiar with it, and they can get a pretty good sense of the real world environment before they
Yes.
ever set foot in the real object.
Mm.
Even going from VR then into like a simulator, right?
Yeah. Right.
That takes you to the next level of immersion, and that, but it can really be a good transition point. I think the other thing I think VR is really good for are some of addressing many cognitive things, like
Yeah.
it can impose stressful situations and scenarios
Mm.
again, but with people with little to no consequence, because you can provide stresses
Mm.
um, without having to put people in danger.
Yeah. Right.
Um, and so it can be super useful there. Um, One of the limitations, of course, is that these VR headsets, one, you're closing people off from the real world. Now,
Yeah.
they have pass-through cameras, great. But what happens if the power goes out, if your battery dies, if there's a glitch, people are essentially blind. So
Yeah.
there's a,
Right.
there's a there's a safety concern depending on where those people are.
Mm.
These devices are also designed to be used indoors and
Yes.
and in environments that are air conditioned and
Mm.
more office-like environments.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so and those don't tend to always be the environments that workers operate within.
Yes. Mm.
So again, that's one of its benefits is
Mm.
that they can learn how to do something in a safe, comfortable environment.
Mm.
But at a certain point, they actually, the people who are performing those tasks need to be able to operate on real world equipment and in real world environments that
Mm.
could be, hot, could be dangerous, lots of moving things. They could be elevated in places where they could fall and need safety equipment, and that may not be compatible with a VR headset, for example.
Mm.
So the next area that I think is important is when you get into XR and you get see-through devices. Now,
Mm.
but I think before you go there, we're assuming that it all has to be wearable devices, but there are a lot of things that you can do with tablets and with mobile devices as well. And you can, a bunch of the examples that I've given so far, step-by-step instructions with pictures,
Mm.
video, audio, that can be viewed on a device with a camera easily,
Yeah.
and a tablet or phone.
Mm.
However, you have to, typically you're holding it, right? And so
Mm.
that does limit your mobility or your ability to use your hands for other things.
Mm.
Um, and so that's where these see-through device,
Mm.
is going to be wearable is going to be much more user-friendly and helpful.
Mm.
And you can overlay content on top of real-world equipment.
Oh, wow.
Um,
Mm.
and people, back to the VR environment,
Mm.
one of the challenges with those environments is you have to create all the content. So you have to create
Ah,
3D models, you have to go and
yes.
scan environments. There's a big effort to get the data into those devices.
Mm.
However, for these XR devices that can overlay on top of real world objects, you don't necessarily have to put as much effort into creating content because you can just overlay useful data on top of the real world without having to create a simulation of the real world. And
Mm.
so a lot less upfront work, a lot less processing, by the way, to display content because you're just doing overlays. You're not having to recreate the environment.
Mm.
So that's one of the important distinctions and differences. And it becomes even more stark when you get into some of the wearables that just have cameras and microphones and speakers, right? Like, um, you know, like like these. So, this,
Oh, is that
Meta,
Ray-Ban?
yeah. So Meta Ray-Ban glasses,
Oh,
right? So
I have like a Ray-Ban too, and I usually walk my dog and listen to my
I
audiobook.
I do the same thing, and I'll take pictures. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
but I mean, there's no reason
Mm.
why those can't also be really useful devices for remote assistance and
Mm.
for AI assistance as
Mm.
well, once they get better understanding of the environment that people are in. And so,
Mm.
and so again, you kind of have this. Um, you have this spectrum of
Mm.
fully immersive, recreating entire, 3D environments, transporting somebody to a completely different place,
Mm.
to then providing overlays on top of the environment that they're in. And you can do that today with VR headsets as well, using pass-through. You can,
Yes. Mm.
by the way, the Quest has amazing pass-through capabilities.
Yeah.
AVP has amazing pass-through and spatial understanding.
Yeah.
And I can tell you both those devices work as good as Magic Leap or HoloLens in overlaying and anchoring content onto real world objects. It's just
Yeah.
you're using a pass-through camera instead of seeing through the screens like you do
Mm.
on those devices. But you have those safety concerns I mentioned before, and also but and then you can go all the way down now to like smart glasses, and and that's one of the things I was kind of excited about some of the announcements made
Mm.
by Google
Yeah.
at Google I/O around Android
Mm.
XR is that they're recognizing that this is a spectrum all the way from fully immersive down
Yeah.
to
Mm.
lightweight devices,
Yeah.
and looking at building enabling technologies and a platform for developers that
Mm.
can span that entire spectrum instead of
Mm.
the developer having to go and pick, oh,
Yeah.
what's the best tool for immersive
Yeah.
experiences? But wait a minute, I need a lighter weight version too.
Mm.
So anyway, I digress.
Wow. So yeah, we talk a lot about like, for example, VR, AR, and what's the difference. And I totally agree with you. Like VR, you need to create tons of like a 3D. Yeah, for example, the entire environment need to simulate, but AR, you
Yep.
can just get into the area and with things on top of it. And AI really helps us. For example, when I saw the TED Talk, right? I remember I was very impressed that the woman wear that very lightweight glass and said, "Hey, where's my key?" All right, like just like having a casual conversation. I
Right.
think this has really helped me. For example, every time when I go out somewhere, I want my key, and if I keep wearing it, I can find my key. But the other question is that, for example, you wear glass. I would say when I was in elementary school, I wear heavy glass. I had like a, I don't know, naturally low vision. I like
Okay.
wear very heavy glass. And I remember probably like 10, 20 years ago, I did a laser LASIK. So
Okay.
I get rid of the glass. And now I have to wear glass again just because
Yes.
of all the smart glass. I mean, what do you see? For example, you it seems like you have you wear a glass, right? So your smart glass might need to be more prescriptive. And how
Hmm.
do you see those types of for example, AVP, the lens is prescriptive. I remember I don't have it,
Okay.
but I've been to because remember that Apple had a lot of like a developer workshop
Yes.
right after they launch. So I went to Cupertino 5 times. Every month they have one. I just like a edit. So I've been there 5 times. And I find out that the AVP is really good for independent developer. For example, like every time when I wanna share the AVP to the Apple developer for him to debug for me. And then he will say, okay, let me do all the onboarding again because the eye is start
Yes.
getting different. So what do you see? I feel like I recently saw the news that Apple is totally very late or totally behind on AI or XR. What do you see that AVP? And I saw a lot. Oh, I don't know whether the news is right or wrong. It seems like AVP one is Apple is not really continuing producing it, and rumor has said that their AVP two will be very lightweight. What do you see the Apple's like a pretty late to the game?
So we work with Apple quite a bit at
Mm,
Taqtile. So,
mm,
I was actually recently at a Apple Partner Summit. So I can tell you that one, they are very committed to AVP, the AVP
mm,
platform, including version one. They continue to invest in that platform
mm.
and stand behind it. They're not moving away from it at all.
Okay.
And in fact, I was just reading that that there is a planned chip upgrade that they
Mm,
have, and this is rumor.
mm.
Apple doesn't talk at all about futures.
Yeah, right.
They
It's
definitely don't
very
like.
hard to
Yeah.
invite any Apple people to talk outside
Yes.
of their company. Yeah.
Yeah. No, they're very secretive. And even for companies that work closely with them, there are things that we just are instructed not to talk about, and
Yeah, right. I
but
remember when I was in Apple like a workshop, and the first thing is that you need to promise us you couldn't leak anything you
yes.
learn, including your code. And if you do so, we will cancel or like a forever your Apple account, developer account. Something like a
Yeah.
threatening. So yeah.
All that said,
Mm,
I'm very bullish on the fact that Apple is committed to this space, and I think that they are demonstrating that in a variety of different ways,
mm,
including what they're telling customers and partners and the actions that they're taking with their product.
yeah.
AVP is obviously it's a very exquisite product. I mean, it's expensive, but it's also very well designed and well done. Um,
Yes. Mm,
I think that what I see is Apple is listening to developers and to customers. One of the things that you just brought up about
mm,
they when they originally released the device, they they really went deep on one device for one person, and each device is tied to an individual. And
Mm,
what they're getting consistent feedback on is that many organizations they need to have a device be shared amongst multiple people. And
mm,
so I think Apple's receptive to that. They're making changes so that you can share the device between people much more easily and not have to go through a long onboarding process every time you shift the device to another person. So,
mm,
so they're responding or reacting to customer needs, and that's very positive. Um,
mm.
so I'll say that. I actually think that I don't what I've read about where they're going next is a little bit different. I have heard the same thing, that they have a lightweight form factor, whether that's going to be smart glasses or
Mm.
not. That I believe that is on their roadmap. But
Oh, mm.
how soon that comes to be, I don't know.
Oh, mm.
I do know that I believe what is planned as one of the next releases is a chip upgrade for the AVP.
Mm,
I've heard, I don't know, but
mm.
I think making that device more lightweight is probably likely.
Yeah.
Um, I do have the Zeiss inserts for my prescription. They work great. Obviously, though, you have to pop them out and it's magnetic, so they're easy to take out
Oh,
if you're
mm,
going to share it with somebody else. But
mm.
um, that's one thing. I've also looked online. A lot of people have I like their head strap, the one with the
Yeah.
fabric back, but a
Mm.
lot of people have modified it either by putting a top strap, or some people have a completely different like
Oh,
strap system that they've put onto their AVPs.
mm,
And I haven't seen it yet, but for the AVP in particular, but I have seen it for other platforms. In fact, you talk about needing to wear glasses, and a lot of the devices coming out now
mm.
seem to not accommodate wearing of glasses. But
Oh, mm.
I think you're seeing a lot more creativity and a lot of different ways to address that problem. For example, one of our partners is DigiLens, and they have the
Mm.
Argo. Are you familiar with that device?
Argo.
Yeah.
Which one? Can you type it?
Yeah.
ARGO? I don't know.
Yes. Oh, 1 second. I have one here.
Oh, great, great.
So this is the DigiLens
Oh,
Argo.
yeah.
Oh, it looks a
Oh,
little
it's
blurry.
probably from XReal. Is that?
No, this is a company out of Mountain View.
Oh,
Um,
wow, wow.
and it's so I'll type it in the
Oh,
DigiLens
oh,
Argo.
oh, Digilens. Yeah.
So that device you'll see
Interesting.
it looks very much like glasses.
Mm.
And you can buy an RX um, uh, adapter or insert for it, but they're targeting industrial use, they're targeting enterprise use. Um, and oftentimes, when you target industrial and enterprise, they're going to be sharing these devices. It's not always going to be one to one.
Mm.
And you need to be able to accommodate people who wear glasses.
Mm.
There's a high percentage of people in the adult population that wear glasses. So DigiLens built a Halo strap. And so the Halo
Mm.
strap it works very much like the HoloLens, where you're able to flip the visor up.
Oh.
So you can just flip that part of the device up.
Mm.
You can, I haven't seen, I'm sure if I did an internet search, I'd find it, but I think you could do a similar thing with the AVP, where
Mm.
you could make it so you could flip that up. I think Pico does that too, don't they? Where you can flip the
Mm.
VR experience up out of your view. So that's a very simple way to deal with then the ability to wear glasses underneath it. The one drawback to doing that is it does move the screen a little further away from your eyes. And so therefore, that inherently makes the immersion a little less or the field of view slightly smaller because you're moving it out a little bit.
Mm,
I would argue, though, that that also helps because it engages peripheral vision. So on my MetaQuest, I have the faceplate adapter that allows me to see peripherally.
mm,
Meta sells a faceplate adapter so that your peripheral vision's intact, and I prefer that because
mm,
most of what I'm viewing the real world with
mm,
our solution over the top of it, and so I want to be able to be aware of my surroundings,
mm,
and that's very helpful. So I think anyway, I know this. You started with AVP.
mm,
I think that having something like a halo strap, being able
mm.
to flip the front up like that, I think that would make a lot of sense for many clients who need to have that situational awareness in certain environments. And there are a variety of ways to tackle that with different devices now that I've seen.
Wow. So you use Ergo for the like the enterprise solution as well. That is
Yeah,
more
that
like lightweight.
yes, yeah, and you can they target, they are an industrial first solution. Most of the devices we've been talking about are like home use or office use, and that's how they were designed. The Argo was designed for use in, light industrial, commercial type of environments, and you're seeing now also folks delivering solutions that are targeting specific defense use
Mm,
cases as well. So Rivet is a new manufacturer for that. Anduril, of course, with
mm.
IVAS. But this is, if you look at Rivet, is a new entrant into the space. Now
Oh,
these are dedicated XR devices that are targeting industrial and military use cases,
mm.
and similar to what IVAS uh, was designed for the Army by Microsoft, and
Oh,
now owned by Anduril.
oh, so this is interesting. So this is the new wave to do the military, kind of like
Yeah,
using AR, AI to do all the kind of like I would say, uh, battle. And I remember I look up some interesting AI implementation, and Pomalaki said that, oh, if our enemy can do the AI, you know, automation and do the destroy, right? And we need to do it as well because, if our enemies faster than us, we need to catch up. My only thing, like when I saw that news, I was like, wow, so there will be a drone or some AI automation weapons that just make a decision in real time without human in the loop and doing some, kill somebody, right? And I saw some journal or some article or some kind of like a people wrote an report about the against of this types of AI enhanced weapon automation without human in the loop.
right,
I remember I saw a news that somebody in Gaza actually was like they even put all the security camera in a like a storyline. This family, there were a lot of women, children in the car, like putting a timestamp, and at the end, there's automation of the drone. Look up that car and bump that car,
wow,
and said that hey, this is like a normal people. They are not military, and obviously you see there's a grandmom and there are a bunch of kids, and it's all
right.
women and children. And how can you bump it? And yeah, so how do you see these types of like when our weapon is becoming more and more quick respond and trying to catch up all our enemies like a faster speed, and are we doing the right thing? I don't know, like the moral issue. What do you see that AI enhancement
Yeah, I
weapon
mean,
without even,
I I'll start by just saying, like, I think uh, with respect to these systems
mm,
that are lethal
mm,
in their use,
mm,
I think that at least for the time being, that there needs to be a human in the loop. That's my personal belief. You know,
yeah.
it's like, um, and I think that's where we're at today. I don't know that there are any automated system of any AI or automated systems that are just going out and targeting without some human involvement in terms of providing the destination or the targets or what have you. But again, that's not an area that I also operate within.
Mm,
You know, from my perspective, I look at AI and XR as tools to enhance humans
mm,
and to, frankly, to better our decision making and our ability to, I look at them as tools. They're tools
mm,
to give humans superpowers, not hand superpowers over to, a digital decision maker, but to enable humans to make better decisions, safer decisions, um, you know, fewer errors as opposed to being more error prone. So I kind of take the other view, and that's actually what we're looking to try to enhance, is how do we give people tools to better enable them and
mm,
to make sure that they can perform skilled activities
mm,
with fewer errors and higher confidence, and
mm,
and ultimately have better outcomes um, across a variety of different skill levels. Because one of the things
mm,
that I think um, is evident, and something that we talk a lot about, is there's a very large skill gap that has formed and that continues to grow,
mm,
and it's because of a couple of different factors. One, you have a lot of skilled people leaving the workforce, people with experience.
yeah,
The new people coming in don't necessarily have those skills or capabilities.
yeah, right.
You also have, at the same time, you have this increasing automation that you just talked about. So we have you know more technology in the things that we're operating and enabling, and we need a way to kind of bridge those things
Yeah.
with people who may not be as familiar with how to perform that task. Again, I'll stay away from the lethality items because I that's not an area that we really focus on.
Mm,
But when it comes to, like, well, how do you repair something? How do you operate a piece of equipment?
mm,
That's the domain that we operate within. We look at, well, how do we make it so that we can do that safer and more effectively? And I think AI and XR are ways to do that on a positive side.
mm,
Are there negative ways to use this technology?
mm,
Absolutely. And
mm,
I do believe that those are challenges that our lawmakers and that organizations right now are grappling with, and
mm,
should be. I mean, those are the big problems, that they should be addressing. Um, it also, you can take it to, um, maybe a step down, but a similar um, concern is, well, what about, are these going to take people's jobs away from them?
mm,
Now, uh, I think that, again, we're looking at how can you use these tools to enhance people's capabilities.
mm,
Now, I think that may, um, there are a lot of factors there that we need to evaluate. For instance, well, what about people, like, are we taking away entry level jobs for people? I would argue that these technologies help people entry level into the workforce be able to perform certain tasks and skills more safely and more confidently when they don't have the experience to help them get that experience on the job. I also believe, and I think that this is something that's often overlooked, is it extends the utility and usefulness of our most skilled people and our aging workforce. We're enabling them to extend their knowledge more broadly. If you think about tools like remote assistance
Mm,
and the ability for somebody who may not have the physical stamina or capability to, lift the equipment and churn the wrenches all day long like they used to when they were younger, but now they can sit back and they can provide remote assistance to
mm,
that younger incoming workforce, and they can help them through those things using these tools to extend that capability.
mm,
You're getting more utility out of that individual for a longer period of time.
mm.
They're able to contribute longer, and this technology is enabling them to do that. So I look at those sides of it, and that's where I think we can, where we try to focus our attention, where I try to focus, how we can apply this towards enabling humans and helping them be safe and 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 have better outcomes as opposed to the negative side, which is easy to go and get wrapped up in as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and also you mentioned that, for example, like AR, AI, right? And tell us more about, like, for example, like how spatial anchors, digital twins, IoT, how those combined and help the enterprise to enhance or kind of make their workflow more efficient.
Yeah. Well, I'll start with digital twins, and it takes me back to one of the very first questions you asked me, which
Mm,
were had to do with you were asking how AI
mm,
and some of these tools um, can apply to developers who are building for consumer and gaming experiences versus enterprise experiences.
mm,
And one of the really interesting trends I've been seeing um, in some of the newer AI tools that have been coming out are the ability to create digital twins, the
mm,
ability to use natural language to create scenes. So if you were a game developer and you wanted to create a new character or you need a piece of equipment in your game, um, you don't necessarily need to go into Blender or 3D Studio or a similar tool and model and create that from
mm,
scratch yourself. You can now use um, some of these newer tools to describe what it is that you want and get various permutations of it, and then utilize those as assets in your game or your experience. That's really interesting and exciting. And I think especially for individual indie developers or small teams, they have a bunch of new tools at their disposal to create these, these assets that they can use in their in their experience. Um,
mm,
in enterprise, it would be awesome if we could do that. And
mm.
I can go into one of these tools and I can say, generate a digital twin of a jet engine, and it
Oh.
will go create a generic jet engine for me. But it's not going to really be able to create the jet engine model of a specific model number or part that
Oh.
that that aligns to a work procedure that I need. And so
Mm,
um, so, so I think that from that perspective, on the content creation side, there's some benefits to more of the consumer and gaming side that haven't quite made their way to the enterprise side that really needs precise, accurate representations of real world objects. Now, I
mm,
say all that,
mm,
but on the other end, there's some really interesting things that are out there today
mm.
with these capture tools. So now,
Oh, yes.
simply with an iPhone and like
Mm,
with depth sensing cameras on it,
mm.
I can use
Point cloud.
poly
Yeah.
Polycam
Yeah,
or
right. Mm.
Niantic has their
Light ship.
scanning.
Ah. Uh,
Yeah, they have their scanning tools as
mm.
well. ScanniVerse, I think, is the Niantic tool
Oh,
where,
scanners.
yeah, where you can create the digital twin from the real world object or the real world environment, and you can
Mm,
capture that. You mentioned point clouds. That's one.
mm,
There are a number of different ways. There's the splats, which I think is what Niantic's using. Um, uh, this is really intriguing because now you can capture a detailed um, replica, a digital replica of a real world object to exacting detail or very close to exacting detail, certainly good enough for the types of tools that we build, which are work instructions to say, where to go, what lever to churn,
mm,
what bolt to remove or replace. And I think that you can use these technologies to create very accurate digital twins of real world objects. And I'm really excited about that technology. And we utilize the digital twins inside of our tool. We Manifest, um, we have integrated Reality Composer into Manifest Maker. That's the Apple scanning capability that's built into their platform
mm,
to be able to capture objects, and then you
mm,
can use that inside Maker. But our enterprise version of Manifest, you can bring in a variety of different 3D model files to enhance your environment, whether that you need to do
mm,
training in a classroom where you don't have access to the equipment, or maybe you have
mm,
access to the equipment and you want to show parts, pieces, and components of that equipment overlaid on top of, or even get an X-ray view inside of it.
mm,
We can take advantage of these different files and file formats to both static and animated to provide that digital twin capability.
mm,
Now that's just the 3D model component. Of course, digital twins can include more than just the visualization piece. A true digital twin would, especially if you're talking about the digital twin
mm,
of an existing real world asset, might also include sensor data information, such
mm,
as how many hours are on the engine. If the engine's
mm,
on right now, what's the RPM, right?
mm,
What's the pressure in the oil pan, things like that. And that's where you mentioned IoT, that's where the IoT can come in. So
mm,
if you have that sensor data and you can marry that to the object, you have a different view of that digital twin.
yeah.
I can tell you what the temperature of it is. I can tell you what the pressure is.
Mm,
These can be very important and helpful,
mm,
not just in preventative maintenance and in safe operation,
mm,
but they can also be useful in terms of making sure that people can safely perform maintenance activities.
mm,
It may be unsafe to touch that piece of equipment because it's too hot, for
mm,
example. And just by looking at it, you may not know that, but if you have a sensor on it and that can
mm,
display the temperature in AR
mm.
to an operator or a maintainer before they go to touch the piece of equipment, you could prevent them from burning themselves,
Oh.
right? So
Mm,
something as simple as that it can be super useful. So our platform, not only makes use of digital twins, but we can
mm,
integrate this. We call them meters, but we can integrate Internet of Things,
mm,
into the experience, um, and we have clients who've utilized those as well, and to great effect. So I think those are some exciting tools that are out there. And of course, these things, particularly the IoT
yeah.
meters, they're creating data that can also be analyzed and used for providing decision support at the time of use, like I
Mm,
mentioned, and also over time.
wow.
So
Mm,
we have one example where we have meters overlaid on top of an engine, and for each of the valves in let's say it's a 16 valve engine, and a couple of the valves are hot, and so if you were troubleshooting that to say, well, what's causing those valves to be hot,
Mm.
one one of the reasons for that could be that the timing chain is off, and so you
Mm.
can see that, okay, well, I need to adjust the timing chain so that I can get those valves to be the appropriate temperature, right? And so
Mm.
so you can begin to inform the troubleshooting tools or the individual who's performing a task or trying to troubleshoot that, a remote person, and of course AI. If these inputs are put into AI and AI has been trained appropriately, then it can also use these inputs to provide you better support
Mm.
as it's trained to observe these types of issues.
Wow. So I think for AI, AR, spatial anchor, digital twins, IoT, all those combined together really helps the enterprise training, and also
Yeah.
helps like novelty instant become the expert just by all the data's provide right in front of you and tell you what to do. So I think that's definitely like a really great way, amazing solutions for enterprise training, and also help them to acquire knowledge that you couldn't really find online. Like
Yeah.
a very protective, like the data being secured. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't talk too much about the spatial anchoring, but the important part of that is, one, if you're
Mm.
working with a digital twin or a 3D model, being
Mm.
able to align that to the real world,
Yeah.
right? So you typically use a spatial anchor for that, but also any overlays. So if you're
Oh.
just talking about overlay of AR content on top
Yeah.
of a
Mm.
real world object, the system needs to understand. For example, in our tool, we have a note type called a hand note.
And
And yeah, so you can record hand gestures, hand movements.
mm.
So let's say that the step is to, churn a dial. And
Mm.
so you can record a hand note where the hand goes up, touches the dial,
Mm.
churns the dial,
Yeah.
and an operator can visually see the representation of a hand
Huh.
doing that because that's how it was authored. Well, you need to make sure that the system understands where that dial is, so that virtual hand
Mm.
ends up over the top of the real world dial. And so we use a variety of techniques to be able to do that.
Mm.
Um, and that is important to be able to anchor that content to the real world. And that's something that that's one of the things that I'm kind of excited for, even some of the lightweight smart glasses,
Yeah. Mm.
to like even without a screen, if it has spatial understanding, it can
Huh.
provide pretty good guidance, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that's something that I'm looking forward to in the near future.
Yeah, I think now the technology is getting better and better. And for us, I think it's a great time to um, merge all the learning, all the immersive technology, and also AI and digital twins, IoT, and combine them together and come up with like a good solutions for like enterprise or individuals. And I think this brings the promising also for XR and AI, because I think for XR, I think AI can be implemented into every area. It's just the efficiency of how you present or kind of like come up with the solution, or more like a research, like a quickly come up with something. Yeah, I think AI is really helpful. But for XR, not every solutions need a visualization. But I
That's true.
think
Yeah,
training, education, or some interesting way, for example, like military or some you are seeking for precision, and also something that is very dangerous. I think those are XR AI fall into a very specific scenario that really helps education and training. And
Hmm.
also, I would say storytelling. However, storytelling, it seems more like for the entertainment side, because for entertainment, you can have so many options, right? I
Yeah.
remember before I interviewed Charlie Fink, he said that XR in entertainment is just a genre. It's not really,
Yeah.
because a lot of people said that, oh, XR game, right, will be dominant simulation. But
Right.
you see, like it has been, and it starts with the game. It
Right.
has been a very long time, and people start still like play Steam game, or like a more like a 2D game, right? And
Hmm.
for movies, people still Netflix or TikTok, like a 2D, like for the immersive types of enjoyment. I think probably because the headset is heavy, right? Costly, and not enough good content. And a lot of content usually cause motion sickness, and people couldn't be in VR for too long. So
Hmm.
for the entertainment, people just wanna relax, and sometimes you don't even wanna press the button or do too many
Right.
game stuff, right? And VR, I usually tell people that I only can be in VR for 40 minutes. So,
Okay.
which means that pretty limited for the content production. So I think AR, and especially for training, it's a must have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I do think that I think this niche is really helpful for people such as firefighter. I know police officer using VR, and you mentioned that adding up the pressure, right? I remember I talked to another police like a VR system. They said that they add music to
Right.
increase the tension, make people
Interesting. Yeah.
feel more nervous
Yes.
when dealing with like for example, there's a gun, there's a robber in front of you and trying to kill somebody, and they add like a lot of like a pressure to that
Noise.
police,
Yeah.
and just to make sure that police feels double or triple pressure while making the decision. So yeah, so I think those types of training really helps people work in the more like a emergency area, or
Hmm.
in the place that is not safe, and making sure the staff get fully trained in a safe environment. So I do see the entire more like a bigger picture, and how this world will end to, and hopefully, those like a automatic without human loop weapons can can be kindly, stopped, because I think, eventually AI will figure it out. Human is the largest problem in the
That's true.
world. And you see, like, because if you see like a AGI, right? I think yesterday I saw in uh, Harvard Business Review, it says that people with lower AI literacy tend to embrace AI a lot, and people with higher AI literacy usually suspect, because they know how this magic box being built, being
Yes.
trained. So I think when I saw like the Nobel Prize, or like a lot of like a people on the top, they start warning that how AI will, you know, do to the world if we are not aiming to the right direction. And like a singularity is near. And I saw like the TikTok, the author uh, wrote another book. It's called "The Singularity is Nearer." Just put an
Okay.
ER and another book coming. So yeah, so I think yeah, like a AI is the, just like a Jensen Huang mentioned, that is the tools that is probably we are the first like a generation, like there is no history that has invented such a powerful tools that
Yeah.
is pretty much the collectoral humans entire humanity's intelligence from the history, right? I would said that right now we are the Cyberman era, which, because I know like a lot of teachers, because I'm also in the education field, a lot of teachers thinks that the AI is like a cheating, right? Like a how
Mm,
to prevent student cheating, and they start
hmm.
buying like a blue grid, like a pen and pencil type. So everybody go back to that era, like everybody writes, so there's no cheat. But I would say that this is the time where everybody, not only we are an individual human, but we are a cyber person. Our brain can access to the entire humanity's wisdom, right?
Mm,
To help us to solve the problem. All we need to do is to ask a good question. And it's very hard to ask a good question and know
yes,
what's a good answer. So
that's
I think
fair.
the entire education, I read an article talks about the the education should go back to, you see, like the ancient Greek, Plato, right?
Right.
Socrates.
Yeah.
You ask, it's more dialogue of
Yes.
education, and teaching student or teaching a person become a real person, like
Right.
a civilization, right? Or like a citizen, right? Teaching us, and also I think the ancient time, the philosophy queen, king, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think maybe our education can go back to more like a, dialogue learning, and also
Yep.
teaching. You see, like right now, our king, right? Our king is definitely not really, having a lot of issue, a lot of trouble. I don't want to say too much, but I think we do really need to think about what's the goal of education. It's definitely not the standardized, because you see like all the white column. You see Guac 4, I hope it is true that meet all the standard to be a doctor degree, right? Like
Right. Right.
the achievement. So maybe we need to go back to think more and be more human, right? Yeah.
I totally agree with that. So in terms of we need to think about those skills that and how we interact socially. I look at you know there's different levels of like back to the AI being used by students and what have you.
Yeah.
I personally think you need you, you need to expose these tools responsibly to kids, but
Mm,
you also um, you know when people are and they've done studies on this, but people are learning, they need to learn how to learn. They need to learn how to perform the critical thinking.
yeah.
And so it's just like you don't give a grade, like a second or third grader a calculator when you're
Mm,
trying to teach them, their basic math skills.
mm,
Later, you introduce the calculator when you're giving them advanced math skills,
mm,
because then they can use the tool to do what they already know how to work out, and then they
yeah.
can focus on the higher level problem. I
Mm,
think AI is very much the same way. It's like you don't want to introduce this to people who are learning how to capture their thoughts and ideas, or learning how to
mm,
create a story and do storytelling,
mm.
too soon, because it
Yeah.
will it
Mm,
will it will it will stifle them. But once they become good at storytelling, then and they've accomplished that, now this can become a companion tool to help them brainstorm new ideas, maybe
mm,
help them figure alternatives to, different ways that their story or their character might evolve.
mm.
I think that we need to be much more reasoned about how we approach that, and I agree that now classroom time really should be about having those conversations about interacting with your fellow students and with your instructor, and learning how to learn, and
Mm,
learning, some of these um, um, capabilities. Even how to best apply, AI. I think that you have to have those conversations, and challenge, younger people to also have this conversation, make them have to think about it, about
yeah, right.
and when and where and how best to use it. And It's interesting. I hadn't heard the going back to you know the kind of philosopher's approach to education, but that's an interesting uh, way to think about it. I'll have to put some more thought into that.
I
But
saw like an article talks about, yeah, AI, like the dialogue is pretty
yeah,
much you need to ask a good question in order to get a good answer, because garbage in, garbage out, and
right.
without having a critical thinking, because you don't even need to have a prior knowledge. For example, Jensen Huang, because somebody like I just watched the CNN news that a host interviewed Jensen Huang, and
Hmm.
he said that because the host was questioning Jensen Huang, like, oh, you mentioned AI is wonderful. You encourage everybody use AI fully because of your
Hmm.
business, right? Um,
Right.
but but he used you see like MIT recently has researcher shows that when students use ChatGPT, they think less, right? They
Right.
even put like
Yes.
all the brain scanning, like, oh, nobody think. The thinking area is like nobody really think when using ChatGPT. And Jensen Huang, I think it's real. He's probably the best salesperson. He reframed the question. It's like he said that, okay, so I didn't really read that paper, but I will get back to you when I read more. But what he said that he doesn't really know what's the test, what's the question, or
Right.
how students proceed using ChatGPT. Because he said, when I use all the, he said all the AI chatbot, he used everything and use it every day. And NVIDIA's engineer 100% using AI to code. Chip designer, everybody fully embrace AI. He said that he used AI is not it's not the memorable stuff. It's not preventing him to think, but to think
Right.
more. He used AI
Exactly.
to learn more. He asked AI and to brainstorm to do something that he hasn't reached before. So he
Right.
said by using more AI, he become more smart. He feels his cognitive low, he's
Yes.
keeps thinking. So I think the way you interact with ChatGPT will result in how your brain becomes smarter or not stupider, right?
Yeah. Well, and again, I think it goes back to, he's already gone. He went to school. He learned
Yeah.
how to learn. He learned how to become curious. He
Mm,
learned how to research and
mm,
discover things. It's not that different. Like a lot of people look at our augmented reality work instructions, and the ultimate goal
mm,
in many cases is to eliminate the need for training for certain things.
mm,
Now, I would say yes to a point. It's like I would very much, want to make it so that an electrician would be able to work on a wiring harness
mm,
in the JLTV that we just mentioned, and also perhaps in a helicopter, right?
mm,
But do I think that they can use XR to
mm.
learn the fundamentals of electricity and how to use the tools and like it can be a tool in that, but they still need to learn the
Yeah.
fundamentals of electricity. They
Yeah.
need to learn the safe operation of tools,
Yeah.
and then if it's, oh well, now I need to take that knowledge and transfer. How do I apply that to putting a wiring harness in this vehicle or in this airframe? Okay,
Mm,
that it's a different scale of problem. Like I'm not assuming that they're coming to this with with no knowledge of safe operation of electricity, right? They still need that foundational knowledge.
mm,
It's just how do I adapt it to this piece of equipment?
mm.
And so I think we just need to be smart about how we're applying that. I believe.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's very similar from that perspective.
Mm.
And I mean, clearly, Jensen, they're doing something right over there. They think they just became the first company to reach a $4 trillion valuation.
Yeah,
So
right.
they're doing all right.
Amazing. I
Yeah,
think he can navigate through all the politics and like protecting his company and make it
Yeah.
this like the I read the news. I don't know whether it's true or not because it's from more like a Taiwanese like a swiping some news. It seems like according to Taiwanese said that Jensen Huang's like a network worth is exceeding Warren Buffett.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
so
That's
I was
amazing.
like, wow, it's interesting that before we thought that, oh, investment is probably the quick and easiest way if you make the right decision to make money because you just make the money. You put the money in and people work for that money, right?
Yeah.
But you can see like the chips, right? And it's just the infrastructure because right now you can see like a lot of tools, creator tools such as Replit,
Yeah.
Cursor, right?
Yeah.
And I think like I saw a lot of like tools, and you can see like before computer science, engineer, they can pretty much, um, um, you know, easy to get any jobs. But if
Right.
you see recently, maybe they just need one engineer and they can do the whole thing.
Yep.
And for designers, the same thing. It's like there are so many tools you just type like a lovable, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and even Figma. Figma is like a super slowly trying to do some AI stuff. You just type. I saw like there's like a AI tools, but it's not as good as other tools. But
Hmm.
you can see like a lot of like automation of diagrams or like a lot of trying to do integrate with some AI stuff like Canva.
You're right.
Canva,
Right.
yeah, Canva is like I would say, I mean, my background is graphic design, so
Yep.
I can tell you graphic design is pretty much being taken over by Canva.
For
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. It's and it also gets back to the some of those entry level roles too. It's like,
yeah,
especially if you're starting out, like how do you get the experience
yeah.
to get to that next level? That is there is definitely going to be an impact of these technologies on society going forward.
Mm,
And we have yet to know what that full impact is. I mean, I was the Industrial Revolution
mm.
had a significant impact on society as it
Oh,
occurred, as it came about. The internet had a big impact on society that we're still
mhm,
living through right now. And this is yet another big step change. And
mm,
I think you have there's really positive things that can happen, and
mm.
there are challenges that we're going to have to work through
Oh,
as well. And one of them that's emerging is,
mm.
I think something that's surprising too is that it seems to be hitting these white collar jobs first, and
Yeah.
the ones that you just mentioned,
Mm.
um, in part because it's invented by those same people, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's software developers and
they
UX
create the
designers.
product. Yeah, they create the product that eliminate their job. So pretty
Yes.
much like that.
But I believe, I think that as we know, there's still plenty of jobs out there.
Mm,
And people might need to shift their focus, and some of these tools are going to help people perform some of these other jobs and functions.
mm.
Um, but I don't know what they all are yet. I don't think nobody can really tell us. I can tell you that skilled work,
Yeah.
that's a safe place, and we feel really good at Taqtile about
Mm,
the target segment that we support because we see, we actually see more and more people looking at that, and skilled labor, things that require
mm.
working with your hands. I also think we talked about this, things that require interacting with people.
Yeah, right.
So
Mm,
you talked about, like Grok being able to, operate at a doctorate level, but you still, like, I'm not going to go to an AI tool to help diagnose. It might be fine to help diagnose
mm,
a problem, a medical
mm,
problem, but
mm.
it's not going to go solve the problem for me, right? Like, I
Yeah.
still need a doctor to prescribe the medicine and to perform the surgery,
Mm,
or provide the, tell me, and I want to talk to them face to face.
yeah.
Maybe that changes in the future, but I certainly personally, I wouldn't trust an avatar version of a doctor to tell me what to do yet. I'm not there.
Yeah.
And so I think we have some time. But that is, the pace of change is accelerating, and it's, we are all having to kind of we're going to have to adapt to this new world. Um, and some of the tools make it easier, and some of the
Mm,
tools are causing the change. And
yeah.
um, I guess that's the world we live in at the moment. It's exciting for me, and but I've built my career around technology, and I've always been. I think that one constant that I think people are going to have to get used to is change. I
Mm,
also think that that's why it's really important that we when we look at education,
mm,
that you need to teach people to be curious and teach them how to learn, because
mm,
you're going to, there's going to be a need for constant learning of new
yeah.
things, and adapting.
Yeah.
I think those days when you learned one thing and you could stick with it your entire life, and
Like sushi master. A lot
yes,
of sushi
exactly.
master they've been doing sushi for their life, and they,
I think though that those are narrowing the types of fields that you could go into to do that.
Mm.
So
Yeah, yeah. I think it's very interesting, and just echoing what you mentioned, that learn how to learn. I remember I read an article or something. It seems like right now I'm applied to that. It's from Richard Feynman. His
uh-huh.
theory. He mentioned that his way of learning is that find a subject you want to learn, and second is that learn it and then uh, teach somebody who doesn't know anything about that.
Right. That's how you know
Yeah,
that you've
whether you,
actually learned
yeah,
it.
if that
Yes.
person know what you're talking about, and it means you know. If
Yeah.
that person
No,
doesn't really know.
yeah, no, I think I read the same. I read the same thing. It's like, you find out whether you've really understood or learned a topic when you have to teach it to someone else, and that's when you
Yeah,
know if you've really understood it. Yeah.
yeah. This is also the reason why I start my YouTube channel. Yeah, because before, back in 2017 or 19, that time I was like, yeah, I want to learn XR. But just by watching tutorials, I I feel like, wow, this doesn't really feels like I know. So that's why I create a YouTube channel, just put a lot of tutorials there. And every time when I learn it, when I when I create a tutorial and I know what I don't know.
Right.
So I think that teaching is the best way to learn. That's also something that I believe. So you mentioned that learn how to learn,
Yeah.
and I think yeah, like there are a lot of different ways to learn. But for me, the way to learn is that I usually do the backward. I tell people, or putting like some banners and tell people, hey, I'm going to teach like something Vision Pro in a week or in a month, and see how many people like and subscribe, or pay for the workshop. And if people, I saw like 7 people pay like $100 for one AVP workshop, then I told myself, oh god, people pay for that and I don't know anything, so I have to learn more to get through this. So it's also my drive as well. So
I see.
I'm doing the backward kind of learning. Tell people I'm going to teach something in the future.
Right.
Yeah, and I work hard to achieve that goal.
Well, I guess you make sure the market's there first. So
Yes.
yeah.
And to be honest with you, if nobody signed up, and I don't have to learn, because
Right.
yeah, nobody is listening. Yeah. So yeah, I'm also doing like it's like a Amazon has a backward, right? They have
Okay.
a
Yeah,
book
right.
called Backward. Yeah.
Okay.
They start with the PR, like the marketing, and
Uh-huh.
see how market respond with one feature. And if people love it, then they work hard to build and meet the deadline. Yeah. So
Okay. Interesting.
cool. Awesome. So what's the one thing that you still like to share that we haven't touched on yet?
Boy, I guess there's so many places that we could go. You know, one of the areas I think that I I didn't drill into as much into some of the benefits of at least some of the um, XR enhanced work instruction capabilities is the ability to use it for audit and
Yeah.
for compliance and
Mm.
the ability to do things like evidence capture. So I talked a lot about how we could use we talked about authoring of content, right? And how you
Yes.
can use these, but the devices, these XR devices, can also be used to capture evidence as a task is being performed.
Mm.
Flag faults, both with the procedure and
Yeah.
or with the equipment, and
Yeah.
that can then be reviewed and analyzed by supervisors or by auditors. But it's also evidence that it goes into a data repository that can also be analyzed by AI over time as well. And
Oh.
so I think that was an important piece that we didn't spend much time on that I thought might be good to bring up.
Yeah, I think AI really be in part of our life, and I can tell you that I fully embrace AI, and I understand that like AI will be improving every month, every week. There's always new model coming up. There's always something new coming up, and I just feel very excited. And also, I want to do more and learn more.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I love our episode because I think we pretty much cover everything.
We went a broad swath, yes.
Cool. Yeah. That's it for this episode. Thank you for listening. We release episode weekly. If you enjoy this conversation, check out our other episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube. Support us by giving us a follow and a 5-star rating, or subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Thank you and see you next time.